We ready? All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'll now call to order the Tuesday, September 13, 2022 meeting of the City of Sugar Land Planning and Zoning Commission. Good evening, commissioners, staff, and members of the public present. We will start with item 2, public comment or public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment or public hearing? Then we will move on to item 3A, consideration of an action on the minutes of the August 25th, 2022 meeting. Commissioners, you've got the minutes in your packets. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I've got a motion to approve by Commissioner Landine. Is there a second?
Second.
I've got a second by Commissioner Parikh. Any discussion? All right, please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioners. Item 4, public hearing. At this time, we will hear from Laura Waller regarding a recommendation of a proposed amendment to the Imperial General Development Plan Ordinance number 1969, allowing for additional commercial land uses to members of City Council. Laura, good evening.
Good evening. So before you tonight is an amendment to both the, an amendment to both the General Development Plan as well as the General Land Plan. Okay, so this area here is the entire Imperial District. The amendment, however, is specific to commercial uses in the Highway 6 District. This GDP amendment does not affect areas that have already been rezoned to FDP. It is strictly for areas that are still zoned under the GDP. And while the Highway 6 Voss B2 area was included because it's a portion of the GLP, it is specifically not included in the GDP, the General Development Plan that is being amended. It was just included in the notification process because of the General Land Plan amendments. Okay, so the GDP amendment, again, is to allow for commercial and retail uses. It's this area here on the left that's highlighted in yellow. And the mouse is, there it is. Okay. It is this area here on the left that's highlighted in yellow. This is the Highway 6 Commercial District. Currently, per the General Land Plan and GDP, this is to be primarily office uses with some limited commercial uses, such as maybe a restaurant, some accessory uses like daycare associated with an office building. But the property owner and developer does want to open up those options to include more retail and commercial uses, such as retail stores, departments, apparel stores, grocery stores, beauty and barber shops, repair shops, other personal services such as that. The current FDPs in the area, such as Tract G, which is just below the underneath Imperial, as well as Tract I, which has been zoned through an FDP. Both of those FDPs allow for all of these commercial uses. They are simply being added to the General Development Plan to be used as options for Tract J, as well as the remainder of Tract H that has not been FDP'd. Remember, there was a portion of Tract H here, Reserves A and B, that came forward before you as a medical office building use a couple months ago. So again, those uses were specified in the General Development Plan. Per the General Land Plan, they are also, it was previously labeled office for both Tract H and Tract J. However, it is going to now be denoted as mixed use. So this is a mix of commercial uses. This is not mixed use as in commercial and residential. It is strictly commercial still, non-residential. But it'll include miscellaneous commercial uses such as retail, restaurant, personal services, that kind of thing, as well as still allowing for office space. And all other areas are unchanged. So the only areas that are changing are this Highway 6 district for Tract H and J. The exhibits that were included in your packets this evening are the Exhibit B, which is the General Development Plan, the text of the document, as well as Exhibit B1, the General Land Plan, and Exhibit B2, the permitted uses, which is showing the new uses that are allowed in Tracts H and J. The other exhibits were not included in your packet because they didn't change. They will be readopted as part of the General Development Ordinance when it goes to City Council, but they weren't printed out because it's quite a few pages, and they're not changing. They're still the same. And again, just wanting to emphasize that areas that have already been rezoned to a final development plan would not be affected by these changes. All those FDPs would still remain in effect. This is just for the areas that have yet to be rezoned to FDP. So a public hearing notice was posted in the newspaper as well as online. Mailers were sent out to property owners within 200 feet, and an online form was available to provide comments before the meeting. Staff has not received any comments, any questions, and we are also not aware of any opposition to allowing these additional uses. Therefore, staff does support a recommendation of approval to Mayor and City Council. We do recommend you hold that public hearing, and we look forward to a consideration and action tonight as well. The applicant is present for any further questions, as well as planning and engineering staff.
Thank you, Laura. At this time, I'll open the public hearing to receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on proposed amendment to the Imperial General Development Plan Ordinance Number 1969, allowing for additional commercial land uses. Do we have anyone here for public hearing? Last call. All right, then I'll close the public hearing, and we will move on to consideration of and action on a recommendation of a proposed amendment to the Imperial General Development Plan Ordinance Number 1969, allowing for additional commercial land uses to members of City Council. Questions for Laura? You can start wherever. Commissioner DeWitt?
So if you can go back to slide number 2. Yes. So where you're showing the yellow area, there's a blue patch up in the north corner, first tract.
Up here?
Further down, there's a yellow.
Here?
Yeah, right further, one more down. This one, yes. This one is adjacent to is that adjacent to a detention pond?
Yes. Mhm.
And it overlaps the detention pond?
Maybe slightly, that's where the parcel line is. But detention pond would still be the use of the land.
Okay, so it's just that the property demarcation is also is taking over part of the detention pond, but it will remain.
I'm not sure what you're asking. So are you asking if it would change from detention pond to commercial area?
Yeah,
So the zoning might change, but it's still going to have to be detention pond in order to have the required detention for the whole region. So that's not changing.
okay, that was the question.
Okay.
Then moving on. On D3, development regulation for non-residential and multifamily in Ballpark District. And the same question is actually for D2, development regulation for non-residential and multifamily. So it says that, and I'm on page 7, item 5A, maximum of 325 units in Historic District 1 to be used for a multifamily density, right?
So that's not changing. That's already in the GDP, and that is not changing at all. That is already in existence to be readopted.
Okay. And so when you go down to item E, it says maximum count does not include independent, retirement, or senior living. So they can actually still have a senior living independent of the multifamily.
So this is.
They can plan for a senior living in one of those tracts. And
They
that,
cannot plan for senior living in any of these tracts. This is specific to the district. It's only allowed in Historic District 1. So this multifamily density, these items, that's not part of the amendment. The amendment is only for adding commercial uses in Highway 6 district.
Okay.
That's not change. So if it's not highlighted in the document you have, it's not changing,
I see.
if that's helpful.
Yeah, that is helpful. So everything else that's not highlighted is already,
It's already in existence.
It's
That is
already in
what
existence.
GDP 1969 is. The yellow highlighting is what is changing.
I see. Okay, that helps, and no further questions.
Okay, Commissioner Brown?
I've got a question, some clarity here. Under Exhibit B, A, It talks about, and I guess the words live, work units for townhomes. Is that new?
No, so here, the only thing that's changing is that there was an incorrect label. So it was
Okay.
labeled one thing in one section and labeled another thing in another
So you're just
section. And
merging
for
them so they have the
consistency,
same-
they are just changing, they're adding the word residential district in order to make the title match in both locations.
Okay.
In the document itself, further down, it was labeled and residential districts. However, in the table of contents here, it was labeled incorrectly. So he's just correcting a continuity error.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Commissioner Hart? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Smith. You ready to go? Ah, okay. All right.
So I guess, so it was only 200 feet distance? I know last time we had one comment, and I'm sorry, did I steal your thunder? No. You sure? You can bring it up if you want. Because I think somebody brought it up, but with only 200 feet of broadcast, we didn't get any residents within that 200-foot range.
No, there were quite a few residents. This was sent to probably 50-something people, I think, based on the amount of addresses. It did catch a couple rows of Crown Garden along that boundary where the blue and yellow are. That is, so 200 feet to the east of this boundary covered several homes, all in this area here, as well as along Crown Estate and down here along.
So not across the detention pond like we had.
It would not have crossed the detention pond because
Last
that's
instance.
almost 800 feet, but it would have gotten these areas that are immediately adjacent within 200 feet of the areas that are changing.
Was there any inquiries? towards
None
this?
at all.
Not a one. So, since we're looking at the property that we previously looked at for the medical buildings, why is the applicant wanting to change that now?
So he's not wanting to change the areas where the medical buildings are. It is the area that is surrounding it that is still GDP. This would not change the FDP for the medical office building.
And
It is only relabeling it because it is part of the Tract H that was identified as office before and is now being identified as a mixed use.
okay, so and along those lines is why at this point do you feel you need to change? This was done when? How many years ago was this planned? 10 years ago. So I mean, why now are you deciding to change to a more retail, development as opposed to a more professional development?
Understand. So I'm Jerry Olkey with Johnson Development, the general manager. The purpose is I've been on the project since 2011, so 11 years. And I believe it was 9-10-ish years we converted and had this area zoned for Class A office. And we've found one buyer in 10 years. And we've had to turn away a lot of opportunities to develop this land. And what we're seeing a lot of is a call for, instead of multi-tenant office buildings, is a lot more of the, I want to say, office condo, where you can have more of a dentist, medical office where they can own their own building and not have to worry who's on the second, who's on the third floor. And post-COVID, there's not a lot of people that want to be in large office buildings. So we're trying to look at ways to develop the tract, get some movement and some progress out there around Constellation Field, and instead of having just vacant land not doing anybody any good right now.
So did staff look at changes in traffic flows? I assume there's no new driveways off Highway 6 I didn't see any, but just want to make sure there's no new driveways off Highway 6.
That's correct. With the previous agreement with the state of Texas and TxDOT was there would be 2 driveway connections to this HS3, let's see, right here. For this tract right here, there were always just 2 driveway connections, and there's very specific distances for the decel and acceleration lanes, so that's pretty well defined. And then on the Tract J, we have preliminary approval for 2 driveway connections to meet the fire codes, or the fire marshal's request for having 2 access points to that track. We have TxDOT's preliminary approval on those locations, and we are actively in design of those driveways now. So those are the only connections that will be to Highway 6.
And do you anticipate, so, you know, right or wrong, I just have this bad picture in my mind of this strip mall going along. I know that's probably not what you have in mind, but how, are we gonna look for something more along the lines of something internally facing with some kind of vegetated buffer along 6, so we don't see, you know, just Target, Walmart?
Well, with our guidelines, we're making everybody, you know, amenitize all 4 sides of the building, because we make them amenitize everything that's visible from a public access. So with the public access that is proposed to go up the center from what we saw with the medical office building final development plan that we've already seen, continuation of that, they're going to be visible from all 4 sides. So we're taking care of every angle. There's not going to be much back of house, if you will. I mean, clearly there's going to be meters and things, but we will be screening everything. It's all part of our builder guidelines to enhance what is public view and public visibility.
And do you think that Sugar Land has the population density to support all of this new retail, as opposed to, you know, without an increasing in our density?
Yes, sir. I mean, there's plenty of mobility on Highway 6, and what we're seeing a lot more of is that office condo, 1-story medical buildings as opposed to multi-tenant buildings is what we're looking at. And then we're working with staff as we're trying to create a destination. We've got the Talyard Brewery, which we've seen the final development plan on, just south of the intersection here. Right here is the Talyard Brewery. And so we're looking for other things that'll accentuate that interest there and continue to build on Constellation Field and create a destination.
Any services related to the airport? I mean, it's right across the street, right? I don't know if you know.
Haven't had anybody, I mean, I believe that was always the thought, that with the regional airport being right there, the office would gain mobility. Just did never find it. And then now post-COVID, we can't find hardly any office buyers at all. We found the medical office building that we've sold now, and but they had one tenant that's taken 2/3 of that building, so they're pretty much controlling their destiny.
Sure. It's just kind of sad that I was hoping we'd bring more of that, you know, professional workforce to bring more, more taxes to.
What we're hearing from those buyers is they want to be visible from 59, not from Highway 6.
Not from Highway 6. Okay.
So we're competing with everything around Smart Financial and everything along 59. And but what we are hearing is we have a lot of doctors and dentists living in Imperial in particular, and they would like to have an office where they can be close to home, see patients 2-3 days a week there, and go downtown, see patients downtown or wherever their primary office is.
That's good. I hope that comes to fruition. Thank you. Yeah. No more questions. Thank you.
AP? Yeah. I have a couple of general things, and to follow up on Tim's point on the residence and the 200 feet. Just given some of the other cases we've seen recently, especially the Sugar Creek one, just being more sensitive to kind of the community and what their say is going to be once they realize that we've expanded kind of the uses to include hotels and some mixed use and some live, work, and multifamily. I just wanted to echo Tim's comment on whether or not when this assuming if it passes here and goes to council, they'll get another opportunity, correct, and as part of the process to.
Yes, so that notification will go out again before city council, but I do want to emphasize that we're not adding multifamily or live work to this area. This will still strictly be non-residential. There will be no residential here.
Okay. So the hotel, that got it, okay. Then the other question that I think that Tim also touched upon in terms of, to Jerry, in terms of the demand and what you're seeing in the market. Sometimes I know how these things kind of work backwards in some senses, where if you build it, they'll come. Have you gotten an indication that if this all goes through, that there'll be pretty immediate response from people in the kind of the development world who will jump on this? Or what kind of feedback are you getting out there right now, besides the fact that office purely won't work, professional buildings?
I mean, as I mentioned, we have residents that live in Imperial that have routinely questioned us, and this has been an ongoing discussion with staff for years, trying to figure out what is the proper mix to retract a little bit from all office, Class A office. I mean, it's still an option. If we get office buyers,
Sure.
we'll sell to the office buyers. We're not ruling that out. But to have other opportunities rather than just sit on vacant land. And so, you know, we're looking at how will that fit into the puzzle. And clearly, we don't want to go in and do a bunch of little 1 acres. That doesn't help us. If we come around and we get 1 or 2, we'll be looking at how do we pick up a larger area for the final development plan so that we can see how it all works.
Okay.
But there are several of our doctors and professionals that want to have offices close by. So I'm sure we'll hear from some of them as they see what's going on and continue our commercial sales, stay in touch with them as we get closer to this potential approval on this. So I know we'll see that. And our hopes is when we get the medical office building that we just,
That you already have,
they're tentatively going to close in November. They're pushing their engineering plans hard. Want to get those kind of submitted, get a little closer to a construction permit before they actually close on the land. But my hopes is when that breaks ground, that'll spur some more interest, and maybe we can further on, you know, pursue the phase 2 and the additional offices around there also.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have now.
Andy?
Just a couple of things. This, you mentioned in track H that this doesn't impact the buildings that we previously looked at. Those stay the way they were.
Correct. The FDP will not be touched. This is only for the areas not included in that.
Okay. And then I think I heard you say tie in with ballpark traffic, amenities, restaurants, things like that. Did I hear that correctly, or did I make that up?
Well, in all the discussions that we've continued to have with staff about this area and the entire Imperial project as we continue to have discussions, is we want to create some form of a destination area. A lot of those type restaurants want to be visible from Highway 6. You know, we have the Talyard Brewery, which we're ready to see them break ground here soon. We want that to help spark the interest of other potential restaurants and other opportunities to be in and near that kind of area that's within walking distance of Constellation Field.
Because we've looked at a restaurant below track H, correct? I think
Well, that's the Talyard microbrewery and
Yes,
restaurant.
okay, yes.
That's right here next to the bridge, in this area right here. And so that's the one we've been hoping they hurry up and get their permits, so they can, break ground and, again, spark that additional interest that there's activity. We've been stale along Highway 6 for a long time. And everybody previously pre-COVID was asking, well, what about Imperial Market? What are we competing with? What's happening over at the refinery? Been telling them, guys, we don't have an idea. You know, it's been stale. So
Sure.
let's pick up on Highway 6. Let's activate it. Let's go. And with these opportunities for additional uses, it broadens the spectrum, and it's not tied to just office, which is a tough market right now.
And I got you on that. I think you're right on that, and I love seeing pictures of the Pearl and other stuff. One of my faves. The question I have though is that when we go back to the uses that we're looking to add to it, how do department stores, repair shops, and beauty salons work towards that effort? Because I don't remember the repair shop at the Pearl. Maybe I missed it, but, when I looked through that list, and I think that was the second slide that we asked to see before, as I looked through that, if we could put that up just again real quick, I just look at department, apparel store, grocery stores, beauty barber shops, and repair shops, and other personal services. I don't remember those being a part of that vibrant activity center that we're looking to captivate off of, having a really cool destination right across the street, which I think fits perfectly with that ideal. If you had two smaller medical office buildings that we're not touching go in, that helps a little bit, I guess. You can incorporate, I can see that.
Right.
But if you were incorporating other restaurants, nightlife, things along those lines, maybe some other attraction there, I see that, but I don't see these elements as being anything besides what we see north of Voss on Highway 6.
Well, and the thought is, we have that activation, more to the south end, walking distance to the ball field. As you progress to the north, or you come even to Track J, the one north of Oyster Creek, which is very limited on access. There may be a need for fill-in opportunities if you have a multi-use building, that you take an office on one end, but you may have something on the other end of the building, that can complement it, but helps fill in those areas.
Okay, thank you. No, I appreciate it, Jerry.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Chairman.
Dan?
Oh, and Dan can't tell any more jokes. I want to make a motion.
No, I don't have any, I really don't have any questions. I commend you on, staying with it for 10 years and giving it your best shot. I think this is going to, if all goes well, it'll create some kind of critical mass and it'll kickstart the development and make it that destination. We're all about that. We want to see the market prevail, so I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got some questions. So the first is, I want to make sure I understand what's being proposed here. I get that is it the case that the only area that's affected by what's before us tonight is the area that's in yellow?
Correct.
Okay, and that's strictly the change from BO business office uses to B2 general business uses?
Yes, those are the compatible standard.
For H and J,
Yes.
right? And then where does the additional commercial and retail uses, does that fit in? Is that connected just to the zoning change, or are we doing further modification?
So that is strictly to tracks H and J.
Right, but that's not by virtue of the change of zoning classification, correct? We're
No,
adding to.
That's per the permitted use chart. That's Exhibit B2. So
Okay.
although the base zoning, the comparable district is changing, the permitted use list is really the critical factor.
Okay, and is that the current list, or are we expanding
You
permitted
are
uses?
looking at the proposed list. The
Okay.
items that are highlighted did not used to be allowed, and they are now newly allowed per
Okay,
this proposal.
That's what I thought. By the way, while I flip to that, Exhibit B, I have some questions about that. Do we even know what the occupancy rate is currently for Class A office space in Shoreland? So there's no concerns about there being not enough Class A space if we take this area?
Oh,
and-
I don't think so.
Well, but again, we're not taking it away from Class A.
Okay.
It's still a use.
Okay.
So if there is a market, we're going to sell it for Class A.
Okay, but and in fairness though, if, what I'm hearing is there's a market for other things, and the hope is that these tracks would be developed for some of those other things, which, if that happens, then Class A would have to look elsewhere.
Correct.
Right, okay.
If it takes that long for Class A to come around, yes, sir.
Understood. So on Exhibit B, is everything that I'm seeing there in yellow added?
Correct.
So we're adding that live work unit, live work units and townhome lots can now be added to historic and residential districts?
No, sir. So that is a correction that Chuck mentioned earlier. It is about continuity of the title of the document. So that was an error in the previous document that is being corrected.
What was the error?
The error
those
was
things
that they
weren't
had,
listed?
the error was that in the text of the document, the title of the development regulations section read, live work units and townhome lots in ballpark and historic districts. Excuse me, that is what was read right here. And then in the text of the document, it reads how it reads now. So they are making it the same in both locations. Instead of two different titles, they accidentally left out the comma and residential in the table of contents.
Okay, so the intent originally was to allow live work units and
Yes, the live
townhomes
work units were
in
already
residential
allowed,
districts.
and they are not changing. They are still allowed in the areas where they were allowed previously.
Okay,
I don't think it's allowing, it's just, that was the section title.
Yes.
yeah, I'm confusing because,
It's because that's the development regulations, it's just a list of them. It's not saying that
He's just correcting the
units are-
section
I
title.
hear that, but,
Yeah.
and I get it, but I don't know how I'm supposed to read this document and come to that conclusion. So maybe you can help me out and tell me where that, I hear that you're saying I think that it's a section head title change, but where's where are you getting that from? Tell me in my materials where I can find that.
Yes, give me just 1 second to find it. So it is, I believe it is letter F on page 12.
Okay, thank you.
And that is the correct title, and that has not changed. That
Okay.
it is only being corrected in the table of contents because the comma and residential was left out of the table of
I got it.
contents.
Okay, thank you, that's very helpful. All right, I understand that now. How much are all of the yellow areas, is this a regional activity center?
This area is a regional activity center. The yellow areas is just what's changing per the general land plan.
Okay, and what's being proposed here?
Oh, I'm sorry, it is not in a regional activity center.
Well, because on what we just looked at in our last meeting, it looked like that there's one pretty close to here, so none of the.
It's just below it near
But for the record,
Constellation
the answer to
Field.
the question is, none of the areas in yellow are technically in a regional activity center.
Correct, it is just north of it.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you, I think that's all I have. Any other questions? All right, I've called the item. We have a motion? I don't have a motion. I will just tell you.
I'll make a motion. That we recommend proposed amendment to the Imperial General Development Plan Ordinance number 1969, allowing for additional commercial land uses to the members of City Council.
Okay, I've got a motion. Is there a second?
Are you recommending approval or denial? You just said recommend the amendment.
I'm recommending approval. Thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. I've got a motion by Vice Chairman Simeon and a second by Commissioner Parikh. Any further discussion?
I have a question, just for a point of reference. Could we make this could I make a separate motion?
Not now. We got a motion on the table.
Okay. Could this be voted on in separate sections? Could we do J and H separately?
It's not on the agenda that way. I don't think we can do that. We've got to vote the item as it's been published.
Okay.
Correct? Do you agree with that? He's asking, can we, since the proposal is to change the zoning for, as I understand Andy's question, what he's asking is, since the change would apply to tracks H and J, can we take those up separately? And my answer was no, because that's not the item that's on the agenda and that's been published and noticed.
I didn't know if I could even raise that as an issue.
My motion was to approve it as presented.
Understood. And we have a second. So,
Then I guess Laura will need to, unless he's saying that he's wanting to amend that motion.
I didn't make the motion.
he's asking.
To ask.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, we'll go ahead and.
Sure.
and
Okay.
take it.
Yeah, I understand the applicant's concern about what he's able to get. I have concerns about section H. I have less concerns about section J because it has some physical barriers to the other sections of the development that I think don't pose as much of an impact if these type of businesses were put in section J that they would in section H.
So you're thinking of leaving the one as
Leaving H the way it
H
is.
the way it is,
And J allowing for these changes. That was just I don't know if we can even do that. I don't know if I can, if in our recommendation, we can make that recommendation.
Well, it's not in the motion
Sure.
that's pending. I
Sure.
can answer
No,
that.
and I'm just trying to gather his thought process, this, you
And
know.
I'm-
That would-
and I'm not,
that's,
and I'm not, yeah,
Andy?
I'm just saying.
Sorry, I don't know if it would assuage any concerns, but every part of this does still have to come forward again for final development plan.
okay.
So there's
If-
another chance to see before
Okay.
anything happens and have an opportunity to
Just if,
readdress.
yeah.
Well, just, yeah, I just
If
want
that
to see if he had a good idea.
Okay.
Before we approve it, that's all.
Any other questions? All right, vote at this time. Okay, so for the record, that motion passes 5-2 with two commissioners, Commissioner Landine and Commissioner Smith, having been recused from the vote. So that motion passes. Thank you, Laura. Thanks to the applicant. Thank you, commissioners. We will move on to item 5A, reports. Who's got the P and Z liaison report for the September 6th City Council meeting?
That would be me.
Commissioner Brown?
I got to sit through the wonderful tax and tax rate meeting for city council last week, so thank you for plopping me down on that agenda. Maybe next year we can shake up when I go again. I think that's 2 years in a row. The one thing that passed, or one of the items that came up, was the consideration of the development there by Constellation Field or Space Cowboys Field. That did pass. Council did pick up on our concerns about the crosswalk and made it a contingency with the developer that either A, they address it during development, or B, escrowed money for a possible crosswalk, kind of like what we have out here at the time of development. So I was glad to see council, all of them were aware of it and did pick up on it.
Great.
What was the vote on that? Do you remember?
7-0. Yep.
Okay, fantastic. I always get the 3 August meetings. I'll think about whether I want to trade for tax. I'll think about that. Item 5B, city staff report.
Sure. So our next meeting would have been next week, but we don't have any items, so we'll be canceling next week's meeting, which would have been September 22nd. So we'll see you guys again in October. I believe it's the 11th, second Tuesday. So if we have items on that agenda, we'll see you guys then.
All right,
That's it.
thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. We are adjourned. Good night, everyone. Did you get that for the